Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Europa Rediviva. Today, I'd like to talk about the collective action problem. I've been asked what can be done with respect to the situation in Romania. A commentator actually left a comment that seems quite pessimistic. However, I would argue that it's rather realistic. It's a sad prospect, but it's a true one. The fact that Romanian statehood might be on its way out, and until the end of the decade, we might no longer have a Romanian state. Because I've been asked about what can be done to prevent this, I'd like to point out why it's hard to imagine that something can be done under the current auspices. So, my guess is that the best strategy was Călin Georgescu, and because it failed, I cannot think of another one. So the best strategy to overcome this potential catastrophe in Romanian history, the end of Romanian statehood, is to get somebody in office who is willing to unshackle Romania from these foreign elements that use it not to the benefit of its people, but to towards all sorts of aims which undermine its statehood and might even end it. The most dangerous one being the Ukraine war. However, because the establishment did not allow this to happen, since the elections were annulled under bogus charges, and since both him and Diana Șoșoacă were not allowed to run on geopolitical considerations, I cannot imagine that another political actor of their kind would be allowed. And I'm pretty sure that this tool, as Ursula von der Leyen would put it, this new tool that the European Union has in its toolbox with regards to how to secure election wins for the pro-Brussels camp, will be used in subsequent elections, at least in Romania. I'm not sure if in other more consolidated democracies, but in Romania for sure, because now the people in the establishment have this incentive that once they already annulled the elections once, and once they essentially orchestrated a coup, they are criminally liable for it. They could be punished, and it is in their incentive to orchestrate another one, so as to maintain the current one, the let's say post-coup status, the post-coup order. And this is why I can only see the regime crumbling from its own contradictions. Let's not forget that the Romanian state switched from a somewhat democratic regime from the Constitution of 1923 to a completely authoritarian one from I'm not sure if there was a constitution in 1938, but anyway, the beginning of Carol's one-person rule and one-party rule, the party that he put up together, National Renaissance Front. This is an evolution that is somehow similar to what's going on now in Romanian politics. So the president is trying to get this candidate that was not designated by his party to put him in office, and to therefore create a pro-presidential split in the National Liberal Party. Another thing that is similar is the nomination of somebody. Well, in 1937 it was the candidate that came in fourth, Octavian Goga. He was designated prime minister because he was deemed faithful to Carol II, and the first three winners were not. And now the president of Romania is looking for prime ministers also outside parliament, so with parties that didn't even make the threshold, or that didn't even run in the elections. And let's not forget that the Romanian statehood was somehow preserved, in the sense that the country continued to exist, but the regime fell into an undemocratic totalitarian state sometime before the Second World War. It was not the advent of the war that brought Romania into this totalitarian state, but rather the other way around. Romania's participation into the war was a consequence of the end of democracy and of its complete collapse, and the fact that it had to be therefore led with an iron fist, first by Carol II and then by the conducător, as he was titled, General, later Marshal Ion Antonescu. So yeah, I cannot help see the parallels, and the war that Romania might be drawn into is the obvious one, the one against Russia. And there is this collective insanity at the level of the European elites that they might actually not mind having this war against Russia. But at the level of the Romanian elites, it's more than insanity. It's completely suicidal psychosis. They're not even aware of the fact that this would be a completely suicidal act, and they're not even aware of the fact that this is where they're going. So, with this constant integration with Ukraine, and with this feeble nature of the Romanian institutional system, and the network of Ukrainian agents who create the public discourse, it is very easy for Ukraine to engulf the Romanian state like an anaconda. So to choke it slowly in an embrace of death, and then to swallow it whole. It might sound strange to imagine, but I've also heard this from other political analysts, and interestingly enough, I said it before them, so I'm not sure who copies whom, but Romania offers Ukraine strategic depth. This is the term, strategic depth, in the sense that they want to conduct military operations, having some sort of rear, having some sort of back area where they are impenetrable to attacks. And Romania would serve a beautiful purpose in this regard. So Romania is already functioning as a logistics hub, but it can also, for example, host Ukrainian troop rotations. So why have Ukrainian troops rotate on the territory of Ukraine, which is vulnerable to long-range Kinjal and Zircon and Oreshnik strikes, when you can have them rotate on the territory of Romania? Just an idea. And then Russia would not dare to attack a NATO country, right? This would be the benefit, the added benefit. So why rotate them in Lviv or Chernivtsi, when you can rotate them in Satu Mare or Suceava, right? It's just across the border, but it makes them impenetrable to these long-range attacks. And of course, I can think of many other uses that Romanian territory might have. Not to mention the fact that if Ukraine decided to orchestrate a false flag attack on the territory of Romania, the authorities would be compelled to decree a state of emergency, perhaps even a state of war. And from that point onwards, the Romanian army would be directed to fall under the command of the Ukrainian army, because who has the battle awareness, who is battle hardened, who already knows how to fight the Russians. So it would be it would not be a NATO operation, because NATO doesn't function anymore. NATO functions at the level of the coalition of the willing, and several NATO states are unwilling. Plus, Article 5 is very loose. If you read Article 5 from the NATO Charter, it doesn't really imply any obligations. Countries do, the signatories do affirm that they will take measures to help the country that was attacked, but it's not a firm engagement. It's not something like a mandatory state of war or mobilization or something like this. So the Romanian population would be mobilized in case such a false flag attack would succeed. And it would be an easy job for Ukraine to use them as cannon fodder. Let's not forget that top Romanian generals were already indicted for corruption, and Some political parties already asked for their resignations. Therefore, it's plausible to think that that the Romanian army would come under the command of the Ukrainian one. It's not exactly a far-fetched idea. And the collective action problem that I was talking about is the fact that in order to prevent this scenario, the Romanians should have mobilized for something that they hold dear. And that something can only be the national identity, can only be the common thing that unites the Romanians and that makes them have solidarity with each other, irrespective of political orientations, irrespective of whatever the public discourse says. I've noticed this about other people. So I've noticed this about Bulgarians, I've noticed this about the Serbs, about Hungarians, about the Russians. I'm pretty sure it's true for most people. I mean, it's hard to have a country if your population doesn't have solidarity and if they do not feel united by something. And the fact that in Romania patriotism is so loose and the elites are so anti-patriotic that they make fun of the people who vote for Călin Georgescu, not because they consider them misguided, that they vote for a Russian agent. No, they make fun of people voting for Călin Georgescu because they resonate positively to patriotic elements, to religion, like the Christian Orthodox Church. Even though Călin Georgescu had a message that was I don't know how to put it, pan-religious. He did not address only Christian Orthodox believers. He addressed any kind of spiritual believers, and he also addressed, he gave dog whistles to communist nostalgics and to atheists. So Călin Georgescu addressed a broad spectrum of beliefs, but he was mostly targeting the Christian Orthodox believers because they are also in the majority in Romania. And he tried to reference all sorts of elements of identity. He tried to advocate for a local economy, so an economy that's run to the benefit of the local farmers and that preserves the rural lifestyle and so on. And this was not appreciated by the elites. I'm not talking about just the people that decided to do the coup d'etat. I'm talking about also the urban educated public. So the coup d'etat was done with their consent and in their applause. And they were more than happy to get rid of the candidate that would be patriotic and that would reference patriotic elements instead of multicultural, post-national, post-identitarian ones. Like, for example, they hold dearest to be the Pride Parade. The Pride Parade is the greatest celebration, the greatest holy day of the Romanian urban population, because this is the synthesis of what they regard to be holy. It is the antithesis of what traditional values meant in terms of gender identity, in terms of sexual orientation, in terms of belief, in terms of basically everything. So the Pride Parade is deconstructing every pillar of the national identity. And the urban, so-called educated Romanian public is a sucker for it. It's their number one celebration. It's like a religious festivity for them. And they would rather have a president that symbolizes those values. And Călin Georgescu stood for the opposite. So even though the majority of the Romanians are not represented by the Pride Parade and are rather represented by Călin Georgescu, they're not allowed to have their choice. And this collective action problem cannot be solved. Because the only way you can solve this type of collective action problem is if people unite without expecting some sort of payoff. If they unite under something that's transcendent, like religion, like ideology, like knowing that what you do is correct, around values like family, like the nation, like a shared history, and so on. And Romanians are very weak on this, and there are several explanations for it. One, it's true that the history of the Romanian people is not so glorious as the history of the people around. So therefore, even though several regimes have tried to make it sound patriotic and to give a historical narrative that would make Romanians feel proud, unlike the history of the people around us, the narrative, the patriotic historical narrative, was not exactly convincing. So, if you dug a bit deeper into it, you could see that it's rather shallow. So, it's true that the objective reality of the matter did not help. So, the Romanian elites are not patriotic also because they have this circumstance that the national historiographic narrative is rather weak on the patriotic elements. If you want to build a patriotic discourse, you need some other elements which are actually grounded in truth, because everything can be researched on the internet nowadays. And if you come with certain elements of historiography which are original only to the Romanians and no other school of historiography regards them as such, then yeah, your elites will be estranged from this patriotic narrative, and they will fall prey to the deconstructivist one, which again does not happen to the countries around us. Somehow the Slavic and the Hungarian people, and perhaps also the Turkic people that are in the vicinity, do not suffer from this ailment of having a national history which is not so glorious, and do not fall prey to the deconstructivists, the postmodernists, the post-identitarians. And what I meant by collective action was the fact that if we want to save Romania, we should be willing to put some skin in the game, and it's a coordination game, unfortunately. So if I put skin in the game, you put skin in the game, some other people put skin in the game, it's not going to be enough. We need millions of people to put skin in the game. And if those millions cannot be assembled together, then it's completely futile for me to put skin in the game, and for you, and for, I don't know, 5 others, because you cannot achieve anything. The whole public discourse is stacked against you. The institutional system is stacked against you. If you present some sort of problem to the establishment, you will have the criminal justice system on your tracks. I mean, this now even happens to the pro-Europeans, let alone to the sovereigntists. So how the system works in Romania is that everybody has a criminal file in a drawer. Every politician and every public figure has a criminal file already instrumentalized, already written up and researched, put together in a drawer in some prosecutor's office. And once that person becomes a target, all of a sudden the drawer is pulled out, the file is opened. It is also leaked to the press. That person is called at the National Anti-Corruption Directorate to be publicly humiliated, to put under charge, and to subsequently be kicked out of politics, as you can see these days. And as it happens to Călin Georgescu and to everybody that was involved in Călin Georgescu's campaign. So the people who allegedly were doing a coup d'etat in the protests against the annulment of the elections, which were not instigated by Călin Georgescu. So the prosecutors claim that Horatiu Potra and his cronies were coming to Bucharest to hijack the protests that Călin Georgescu said that should not take place. Călin Georgescu publicly announced that nobody should protest because provocations are being orchestrated to claim that it's a coup d'etat attempt and so on. And people did not go out on the streets, and yet Georgescu's bodyguards and the so-called legionnaires from the French Foreign Legion were accused of trying to orchestrate a coup by hijacking the protests that their leader, Călin Georgescu, instigated not to take place. Călin Georgescu very specifically said that the Romanians should not go out on the streets to protest. So therefore, it doesn't matter how absurd the allegations are. What matters is that you'll have a criminal file, you will be kicked out of politics, and if you are a major target, like let's say you're the head of a sovereigntist party that is the ruling party, like it happened to Dragnea, you'll be sent to jail several times, and who knows what things can happen to you in jail, and you'll come out a broken man. You'll do a cooking show that nobody watches, and then you'll just retire from public life altogether. So, yeah, the odds are stacked against you if you try to do something. And this is why the collective action problem can only be overcome by heroes, by people who are willing to sacrifice themselves. And those heroes have to be in large numbers. Right now, I'm afraid that we don't even have one. I mean, Călin Georgescu is getting it. Călin Georgescu is being repressed. But it's hard to consider him a hero yet. Maybe in the future. Maybe if he'll actually do jail time. But still, I don't see people doing courageous things. I don't see people sacrificing themselves. In these years, when I took various public stances against what was going on, I was approached by several, they like to refer to themselves as nationalists. They like to claim, they like to believe when they look in the mirror, they like to think that they're patriots. And they applauded me, and they said that I was one of them, that I'm also a great Romanian patriot, and that we should do something together. And they take inspiration from the martyrs of the 1950s, the so-called saints of the prisons, the ones that were martyred by the communist regime in its early years, and who gave their life for faith, I'm not sure. But I don't see them following the example. So if they believe in sacrifice, if they believe in the sacrifice of their forefathers, if they believe that only through personal sacrifice can we prevent this outcome, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. So that's why it's hard to overcome this collective action problem. And ever since I've retired from trying to do anything with Romania, and this is why I'm making these comments in English and I'm making them for an international audience, I've been called a coward by several people. But the point is, okay, if I'm a coward, then what are you? I mean, it's easy to comment from an anonymous ID and to instigate things that you yourself are not willing to do. If Romania still has patriots, I'd like to see them in action. I'd like to see some patriotic work. And I'm not seeing it. I mean, sure, there are lots of people doing cosplay. Romania is a country of words, and the Romanians are the people of the word. You know, they say that the Jews are the people of the book. Well, the Romanians are the people of the word. The people of the word, as opposed to the people of the deed. So words mean nothing in Romania, and that's why there are so many patriots of the word. Also patriots of the image. There are all sorts of people doing cosplay. They like to dress up in national attire and to put photos on Instagram from churches or maybe from the gym and to say we fight for the country, but you're just fighting. You're fighting the bench press. You're not fighting for the country. You're just trying to muscle up for the ladies. There's no there's no sacrifice in there. You know, if you develop your muscles in the gym, that's not exactly sacrifice. This is not what our forefathers did to preserve the country. So anyway, this is the problem that we face. There is a minimum threshold of involvement. And if that involvement threshold is not reached, then it doesn't matter what kind of heroic acts some people might do. They're not doing them anyway, but it doesn't matter. Even if a few people were to do such heroic acts, it would still not matter. So therefore, I don't see any solution. The solution was tried. Some people from the some people who had retired from the army, from the secret services, developed this plan to have Călin Georgescu elected. But they did not develop it in the sense of orchestrating his victory. No, they were They were completely clueless, and they just thought that if he runs, he will win because he's the undisputable best candidate, which to some extent he was. But the TikTok campaign to push him to boost his views and to make him popular in the last week of the campaign was orchestrated by the National Liberal Party, by the company that handled the election campaign of the National Liberal Party, which is called Kensington, and which appeared in the file that the president of Romania made public before the elections were annulled, so in the reports of the secret services. But it didn't matter because it was against the narrative. The narrative was that there was Russian involvement, so these people were prosecuted and still are prosecuted to this day. Also, that guy who randomly funded Manele singers and TikTok stars of many kinds. He also gave tokens to people who promoted Georgescu, and therefore he is considered also an acolyte of this operation, and he has a criminal file as well opened on his name, and he was arrested and so on. So, yeah, this is what happens to you if you try to rock the boat. And if the Georgescu operation did not succeed, I cannot imagine anything else succeeding. We will not have elections until 2028, and once we got on this annulment train, on this election cancelling train, I cannot imagine how the powers that be might allow a protest party or a candidate to win the elections and to hijack Romania's further integration with Ukraine and the robbing of the state coffers to the benefit of Rheinmetall and of Raytheon and of NewScale and of all these Western corporations that are basically robbing us blind right now and are having this network of foreign agents ruling Romania for us. So this is what I wanted to talk to you about. If you like what I do, like, share, subscribe. If you want to support me financially, you'll find a link in the channel description how to do so. And until next time, take care.